So for all the participants who don't know me, I am Corey Jo Biddle. They're like, who is this woman just on the screen talking to the fire chief? I'm Corey Jo Biddle. I'm the VP of Community Affairs for the MMAC and the Executive Director of Fuel Milwaukee. And this is the second day of our professional development boot camp. Yesterday was the first day. We had 3 sessions. It was awesome. And I'm really excited about today. I'm kind of excited about the snow, except that it may be late, but I think we'll have a beautiful day, second day of boot camp. So the first 2 boot camp sessions of every day are virtual. Our mentorship morning is what you're doing right now. The next session will be virtual, and then the evening session is in person. For the virtual sessions, we want you to get really comfortable and get cozy. So you're going to have all your discussions in the chat. If you have questions for Chief Lipski, you're going to do that in the Q&A, which is right next to the chat. Make sure you put it in the Q&A so we don't miss it. And if you're going to go in the chat and chat it up, set the settings for everyone so everyone can see your chat. I think the default is for it to just come to me and Chief Lipski. Q&A is going to open up in the last, let's say we'll do the last 10 minutes of the discussion. So everybody got that? Go to the chat, let me know. You got it, you're comfortable. I want to make sure you guys are feeling right at home. Okay, now let's get to it. Why are we here? We are here to have a mentorship morning. This is a discussion about leadership and career and our theories and ideas about what it is to be a leader, a better leader, and how to do that in Milwaukee, which is a very distinct and special place. So because of that, we always choose speakers that are very distinct and special people. And Chief Aaron Lipski is no exception to that. He is the Milwaukee Fire Department's chief. Aaron Lipski was sworn in as fire chief in 2021 after having served the city of Milwaukee for over 25 years. He is a 4th generation firefighter, and he's built a solid and steady reputation as a compassionate leader who understands the community and brings people together. So I did a lot of research on Chief Lipski, and I'll show you some of it, but there are a lot of quotes and a lot of articles with leadership in our city celebrating Chief Lipski for his ability to cultivate partnerships, lead with transparency. He's been called a hero, a bridge builder, an advocate, and an ally. I'm gonna stop sharing so we can get your reaction to that. What's your reaction to that? How does that feel?
I'm supposed to say something trite and like, it feels good. It feels good at 8:14 in the morning. It feels good that people think that about me. That's nice.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions about, I just want to know a little bit about you and the backstory of you, and then we'll kind of get into your career. And then I'll ask you some questions like just about your philosophy around leadership. The first person that told me, oh my God, you've got to meet him, is our mutual friend, Eric Kennedy. And he's like, oh, he's great. You'll find out. He's great. You got to meet him. You got to meet him. And then as soon as I met you, I was like, yep, you're right. He's great. He's awesome. This is the opportunity to kind of unpack why, because a lot of people don't like know the personality of the fire chief. And this is a chance for them to kind of get to know you. So I was not going to ask you this question at first, being that you're a 4th generation firefighter, but I always ask the speakers, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? But I'm assuming that you may have had an idea.
So when I was real small, running around as a kid, like I think many kids, I thought fire trucks were cool. And, I was around it all the time. I was lucky enough to get to spend a lot of time with my grandfather, and my father is still alive. So I was around it. And that it seemed cool, and the folks that they had around they were just solid individual, and they appeared to love life. They appeared happy with what they were doing. And then as I grew into high school and young adult years, I had the opportunity to watch my father throughout my whole childhood. He was always working in very, very busy fire companies in the city of Milwaukee. And it results in a lot of injuries and just exhaustion. and he would come home smelling like soot and just eyes sagging and, bloodshot and just exhausted. And I'll be honest with you, it didn't look fun. He'd come home with his wrists and his necks and ears bandaged up from burns. Those are historically weak spots in our protective equipment. And that just didn't look fun to me at that stage in my life. And my grandfather and my father, for all of the members of the family that have been in the fire department, they really, really hammered home to myself and all my siblings, go get a college degree and do something that'll be easier on your body and put less strain on the family. So they really were very, very big on get out and get a college degree. They can't take the piece of paper away from you once you have it. And for whatever you end up doing. So I was all over the map throughout all of this. At various points, I thought I'd be an architect. I was going to be in theater. I was going to be an actor. And I still act, but people say I act up and act out. So not the type that makes any money. But I really enjoyed the concept of performing. I have been a singer since my childhood. I don't know if a lot of folks really know that, but
really, in choirs.
Yeah, I sang with the Milwaukee Symphony Orchestra choir for a couple seasons, and in a number of rock bands that I promise you've never heard of. This is true. They were, I think our max capacity at a show was about 11, and 5 of those were us. So we hit the circuit hard and it hit back. If I'm I don't know if I'm painting the picture good enough, but we weren't exactly the smash hit of the early 2000s.
Were you the lead singer?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
If we YouTube that, will we find any footage anywhere? Is there any evidence of this?
I am really hopeful that there is no evidence. I am really hopeful. I haven't looked, so I don't know, but no, I enjoy performing, and the folks I got to perform with over all these different experiences were just fantastic. And that started in high school. I went to Riverside High School, go Tigers, and had a fantastic music teacher in high school, Mrs. Kate Wendorski, and her whole entire time in high school, when I interacted with her, I was always in all of these different choirs she had, and she was such a vibrant, energetic person. People were just drawn to her, and we'd go out and we'd win all these awards and stuff and all these competitions. So it's a little bit like Glee or Pitch Perfect, except way super dorkier and with bad hair and worse clothes. So that was really like my high school experience, but I had a great time doing it. I still really enjoy singing. I enjoy music in general, all different kinds. But after high school, I became close friends with Mrs. Wendorski, Kate, and she had battled cancer all throughout my time in high school with her, and several times following my graduation and throughout our friendship. And then she succumbed to it, and it was just a horrible thing. But boy, that went to a dark spot. But she was like the kind of the main focus for me, as far as someone who really took that thing that seems dorky for a high schooler to do, and really like encourage it and go, hey, this is a gift. And the other person that really just fueled that fire was my mom. My mom has an absolutely fantastic voice. She sings also.
Really?
Oh yeah. And so with my mom's, I credit her DNA and just her spirit and her artistic creative mind with, I guess that's where I got that from. My
Mhm.
father, not so much. Not so much on the singing. He can tell a good story though.
Oh, wait a minute. Do you see this comment?
Oh, see, this is that's okay. That's my stepfather, and my mom is with my stepfather. And so now she has taken this opportunity to begin embarrassing me. Thank you, Mom.
I've got it on film.
Oh, this
Yes.
is not good.
Yes, Mom. Let's talk later.
Can we block certain people from chatting?
I love it. I love it. What would your parents have said about you? Like, how would they have described you as a child? What kind of kid were you?
You know, I think I was your kind of prototypical kid that grew up in the 70s and early 80s. We were busy, you know, we literally were the kids where like summertime, we were out the door and we knew to come back at lunch if we were planning on eating. And, you know, then when the street lights come on, I mean, that is really, really, and so I think they would describe me as a prototypical kid, a normal kid. But I think they probably would have said that I worried a lot, or that I was a sensitive kid. And that would probably be true.
Yeah.
I've always been told that I have a very serious look on my face, and people always assume that I'm very like overly serious, or that I'm angry about something. And it's that this is just resting Aaron face. It doesn't mean anything. It's just how I
Just
look.
contemplating,
Yeah.
just thinking. All right. So you had this illustrious music career.
A career, yes.
What made you put down the microphone? And so when did you start making the turn? So you obviously did go to school.
Yes. So
And
my academic career, I did really good in high school. I had fantastic experience at Riverside. Really, really excellent teachers, pushed hard.
yeah.
And then I went to Marquette University, and I think I went there for about a semester and a half. I had a pretty decent academic scholarship there. And then it turns out that Marquette University doesn't play around with their scholarships. So I had a whole bunch of interests that had nothing to do with academia.
Mhm.
And I had a great time. Turns out when you're not performing in your classes, they don't like call you in and like coach and counsel and encourage you. They just send you a letter to your house that says, you're welcome to still come here, but the faucet's being turned off.
Wow. Okay.
And that was the end of my Marquette University career.
Okay. Okay.
And it also oddly times out with the end of my pursuit of theater or music as any sort of money-making venture. My father sat me down, and I credit him for this mindset. He sat me down and he said, took the newspaper, remember a newspaper, and he opened it up to the want ads. And he said, all right, we're going to pretend that it's time for you to find a job acting or in music. So circle all of the jobs that are available for that right now. And of course, I don't even know if we found one.
Right.
And then that was the first time he sat me down and he took me through a monthly budget for running a household. And he was very, very friendly with the numbers, he wasn't overinflating anything, but I remember just the clarity of that really hit home for me. And I thought, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be tapped for, the next Marvel adventure movie. I just, and I know I like having a home and warmth and food, going places, and it made a lot of sense to me. So then I got into emergency medical technician work. My brother had come back from the Army as a medic, and he worked at a private ambulance company in town. And for some reason, that started to kind of re-interest me in getting into public safety type work. And I did that for a few years, and then I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the emergency medical work. And then my father called me. He was working at the fire station, and he says, "Hey, the Fire and Police Commission is going to run another test. Do you want me to get you the information of the dates and when everything starts up?" I was like, I guess maybe. He says, "Well, come on down. Let's talk about it." And I drove down, actually to this building that I'm in, and in the room directly below me was where he was. And he just kind of talked me through, like, well, there's, you got to take a written, and then there's a physical, and, he just gave me like these real broad strokes about what it would take to get on the fire department. And I remembered he had told me a story of his father having a similar conversation with him before he came on the fire department. And his father, my grandfather, told him kind of, well, this is what goes on with the test. But I don't know if you'd be able to pass it. And my dad told me that was the hook for him, was somebody suggesting he wasn't capable of something. So then, boom, he was full steam ahead. He had a very, very storied, solid, proud career. And he didn't do that to me. But so maybe there was some Jedi mind trick that I missed in the whole conversation. I'm not kidding, but I walked out of his office, and I can remember almost an entire shift in my DNA. A light switch flipped on, and I have never looked back.
Really?
I don't know what it was. I've never looked back. I have, I am married to my beautiful wife, Krista. We have a beautiful daughter, Isabella. And aside from them, there's very little else that is in that same bucket of my calling, my priorities.
So the 4 generations, like how many collective years? I think I read something that said there's been a Lipski in the fire department since, I can't remember what the year was. How far back? Yeah,
we had a rough first couple of years because we had to wait for them to invent fire. No, it isn't that long. Horrible dad joke. No, about 115 years on the Milwaukee Fire Department.
Yeah.
1912 is first one.
Somebody said, Jared said, great dad joke. It was pretty good. So you just shifted at some point your whole mindset, and you just got focused. Maybe it's in your DNA. Like,
I had somebody I worked with on the private ambulance. He kind of a legend in the regional fire service here. And he was a real old timer to me back at the time. And he worked at the private ambulance part-time. And he used to joke with me. This is weird stuff when you look back at it. At the time, you just blew this stuff up. But he used to joke with me. He said, "It's your destiny. It's your destiny." And he would say this over and over again, and it poking fun at me. I mean, it wasn't like some big serious, crystal ball moment. It's in your destiny, kid. You're going to be a firefighter. And I don't know. So maybe it was just a wicked coincidence of timing and something that was going to happen anyway. I don't know, but here I am. So
in the department, I think I read it in your bio somewhere when I was reading about you that you had every position.
That's right.
Along the way to here.
Come through the recruit academy, and then you start as a firefighter. I was a heavy equipment operator driving the fire trucks. A lieutenant, then a captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, and now chief. And that and a bag of chips will leave you hungry after lunch.
You're developing leadership skills at every step of the way. Absolutely. When did you realize, or when did you start to feel like a leader, or did you always?
Probably much to many of my coworkers' chagrin. I always felt like we should be doing more. I always felt we should be, even when I was a newer firefighter, we should be doing more. Mm-hmm. And not just we should be going to more fires and to more car accidents and shootings and medical runs. we should just be doing more. We should be training more. We should be out in the neighborhoods more. We should be visiting target hazards and getting in and out of the different odd structures that exist in an old stock city like this. We should just be out more. And it is related to your question, because that sort of thing, I would say that the best firefighters I've ever worked with share that trait, that itch to like be moving, go do something. And there's a natural rise that occurs probably in any organization, but in the fire department, fire service, most definitely, people who lean forward and just insert themselves into the environment tend to rise. They tend to rise. And I guess part of it is you have to be willing and able, but you also have to make yourself available then, and you have to be present when people ask you to be present.
Yes.
I was just talking with someone yesterday, and I said, I got to learn to say no more, because I think something that's inherent in the solid leadership I've observed is when you call them and ask for help, they give you help, or they give you their ear, or they'll help you troubleshoot an issue you're dealing with. And that sounds really great here talking about it. And the reality of it is, many times I stand up and I leave the dinner table at home because someone's calling my cell phone for no other reason than they're stuck on something and they need a bit of advice. And it sounds simple, but when you add it all together, there are many times I've got two phones ringing at once. Someone's walking in the office. My inbox just continues to fill up. And each and every one of those can be a very small problem. It can accumulate and back up on you really quick. The leadership part of it is, as you scrape your way higher in any organization, but definitely in the fire department, nobody should be under the impression that your workload or your effort can go down because you're rising in the organization. If you do this properly, and I think this speaks to servant leadership, if you do this properly, you should be working harder every time you get a promotion. And that fit with my mindset. Like, let's get out and let's do more. And it's been hard, and it's been time consuming. It's been exhausting, but it has been one of the most fulfilling parts of being on the fire department, aside from those seminal moments where you rush in and you find the kid and you get the kid out, or those things I think that, Chicago fire romanticizes, like that's every day, 6 times a day for us. That's not the reality, but when it happens, it's a very special moment for a firefighter. Obviously special for the families involved, right? But the rest of the time, there's something that's at once humbling and also like reaffirming when people come to you for an opinion on things that have nothing to do with firefighting. And I have friends and colleagues and folks I've met once everywhere who they'll just pick the phone up and go, hey, what do you think about this? And I always find myself, I got to like pinch myself and go, I can't believe I'm the recipient of these phone calls. I still don't believe it. I was talking with Fire and Police Commission Executive Director Lee Todd yesterday. And I said, as long as I've been here at the fire department and got a couple of years in here in this office, it just doesn't feel like it's mine. Because it isn't. And it sounds like a cliche thing to say, like people have all these little buzzwords and little phrases they say about this kind of stuff, but it really just never feels like it's mine, which is its own kind of unsettling. And, because I constantly feel like I'm performing. And then when you add in on top of that 4 generations of what has been really good name on the Milwaukee Fire Department.
Yeah.
People think that that's some sort of tidal wave you just ride to the top.
No, it's work, right?
It's the opposite, because you end up putting all this artificial pressure on top of an already stressful situation.
So I think when Eric started to talk to me about you, and he kept saying he's so awesome, he's so awesome. And I know Eric wouldn't say that if he didn't really mean it, and I hadn't met you yet. And I think for me, it was like, I don't have any perception of what the fire chief does or what the fire department does, other than the obvious things that you see or how it shows up in television. But the fact that he spoke so passionately about you, and it came up too when I posted about this event, the number of comments that I got on my post, the engagement that I got in the social media posts about you, really underpins that for me, that leadership, regardless of what kind of work you do, it will make you stand out, and it will make you it will draw people to you. And I found one video, there's people say lots of stuff about you. You're a connector, outspoken, a hero, a strong leader,
Good hair,
all kinds of stuff. All true, right? And so I find this video and I'm like, that's that thing that's drawing people to you. So I'm gonna play it. It's about 1.5 minutes. I'm gonna play it so everybody can see it. I'm gonna share my screen here and just get your reaction to this.
The rest of the Northwest side is without emergency coverage right now, as we're out here putting out fires in a pile of rubbish. So I'd like you to look at the line of firefighters back here. These men and these women have to go into this building repeatedly, putting their life at extreme risk because it has not been properly secured. It should have been raised a long time ago. I'm not the one. I'm not standing here and continuing to commit my firefighters to put their lives at risk. They have families.
There's your music. Wait a minute.
I got walk-on music.
You got walk. It's in your destiny. When I saw that, when you said they have families, and then you turn back around and say, I'm not the one, I got chills. I did, because it's like you get to a place in leadership where you're so passionate about the people that help you do the work that you do. You're serious about the work. You're serious about protecting the community. And it's like, let's stop playing games. And a lot of times people feel that way. There's been times when I've felt that way. And I've been afraid to say it or express it in the way that I want to, for fear that people will think I'm angry or whatever. And you did look angry to me there, but I was like, yeah, like somebody should be mad about that. What was the reaction that you got? Like, tell us what that moment was like for you.
So we had been dealing with the run-up of several fires in this place during July and August. And I believe this was the 4th fire. And I was sitting at home on the couch with my wife, Krista, and I get these little pings on my phone when we have a major incident occurring. And I looked and I thought, you gotta be kidding me. And I told Krista, I said, I'll be right back. And I hopped in my car and I went out to the scene because I had to see, how can this keep happening? And I asked all of the firefighters, they had just finished rolling up the hose. They were just gathering up the gear from the firefight. And I said, I've got to go give some sound to the press on this. And I've always believed if the media is there, go give them an interview, because they're going to get information from somebody. We might as well give them what we know. They're out there doing a job. I think people have a lot of opinions about the media, but I think we might as well push as much of the accurate information out as possible. So I said, I got to go give an interview to the media. And I'm not big on forcing our members in front of the camera. I don't like using firefighters as props. It happens far too often in the entire world of politics. Everybody loves to have fire truck or firefighters behind them when they're making their big hoorah speech. They instantly forget all about it as soon as it's decision-making time. So I don't like using our firefighters as props, but I asked them, would you mind, if you feel like it, would you stand behind, I got to give this interview. I want them to see who's all here. And every firefighter on that scene and every chief officer on that scene stood in that line. And so I kind of walked up to the cameras, full disclosure, feeling a little bit like, all right,
Yeah.
you know, they've chosen to stand behind me.
Mhm.
And that's, you talk about something that gives you chills.
Mhm.
These are a group of grizzled men and women who would just as soon go back and not stand here as I give some big speech. So when I walked up to the cameras, I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew that the sheer number of fires and the magnitude of the risk involved in that building, I knew I had to get it out. Because if I'm not going to advocate for the safety of my firefighters up against the raw element of fire, much less systemic rot that impacts them in this very real way, who is going to advocate for them? And, you know, you find yourself a little bit over your skis at times because outspoken, I think I've been outspoken since I learned how to talk, right? And that runs you into problems all the time when you are that way, because every once in a while you're outspoken, like too forceful, or you pick the wrong word, or, you know, you're not well enough informed. But those are learning experiences. Then you learn that it's not the volume of the shout, and it's not the, you know, pounding of the fist on the table. It's the timing, and it's the raw information that you share. And if people choose to not feel the way you feel about it, or you miss your target and they don't buy in, that's more on me than it is on them. I didn't bring the deliverables to the conversation. I just felt like I had so much information to, like, come on, I don't have any more hair to pull out here. I need for everybody here to understand. And so it just kind of spilled out. And I'll be honest with you, I got probably more reaction from that across public, private sector, government, colleagues across the nation. There was a lot of, I hesitate to use the word, but people were saying, you went viral. And I'm like, what? We're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't want to be called viral.
I'm gonna go
So, but
we gotta have a different word for it.
right. But I'm like, I don't know what the true definition of that is, but I looked and I couldn't believe the number of times it was being shared and viewed.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot. I think people are starving right now for someone to just say the thing, because we are so waterlogged, oversaturated right now in politics and mass media, in management, leadership-esque training. We're so saturated with these little, like, parlor tricks and little, like, phraseology and, like, these largely untested theories that people have made an entire cottage industry out of, just jamming down everybody's throat. People are they just want someone to say the real thing. And the real thing oftentimes is, it can be unsettling, right? And I think the difference is, if you're just trying to be bombastic and trying to be, like, slick with what you say to put someone else down, everybody knows that's what you're doing. And to me, it can represent a failure of you to do your homework and bring the proper information to the table. But people are good, bad, or indifferent, I guess. I've personally found it's very beneficial in this position and for the well-being of the department and for the city to just tell the truth. Just say what it is. My dad always said, he says, I'm not going to lie for me, not going to lie for you. And It's another thing that puts you in an awkward position, especially as a leader of 750 people. If something is right, that's great. We always are. We'll be right out in front celebrating that and giving an award and talking to, hey, look at what these folks did. It was wonderful. You have to be just as available and talkative when something is screwed up.
That's right.
And if we screwed up, let's talk about it.
Yeah. There's plenty of footage of you being accountable and owning up to the mistakes. I mean, in that way too, very brave and outspoken. There's a question. I'm going to go into the Q&A. Okay, so John says, you talked about leadership and change in the Milwaukee Fire Department. In general, how would you say you influence people towards change when they are confident that things are fine the way that they are?
You ask that last part one more time, the actual question.
So how do you influence people to change when they're like set in their ways? It's fine. It's fine the way that it is.
Gotcha. So I guess I tend to think that it does no good if the front of house doesn't match the back of house. And what I mean by that is you can go into any number of restaurants in this city. The front of the house is shiny and gleaming. Maybe the food tastes good. You know, it seems, well, this is a well put together restaurant. But if you go back into the kitchen and it's filthy and there's no care going into that environment and the employees are beat down and they're sourcing food that's coming from, I'm totally making this analogy up. They're getting food from some cheap place because the quality place is more expensive, whatever. That has no choice but to ultimately spill forth into the front of house. And we spend so much time, I think, collectively in leadership, worried about the front of house, that we forget that back of house even exists behind the little doors. We just forget that that's an actual thing. And both should be given attention, right? When the primary concern instantly circuit breaks to the optics of a situation, that you can recognize right off the bat, people aren't on the same mission. As soon as they're talking, what are the optics? Oh, the optics are bad. The optics are bad. I look at it this way. I have highly trained, skilled, courageous, stick to it firefighters and paramedics on the fire department. I can send them to a house on fire and they can focus on how they look. It may sound cartoonish how I'm describing it, but they can like put the fire out, which is what everybody called them there to do, or they can be hyper focused on how they look and how they appear. And my argument is always, if you put the fire out, the optics are excellent. The optics are taken care of if you focus on what you're actually there to do. Mm-hmm. And if you fail in that, you have to take your lumps, right? I mean, that's just how this works. But you have to then learn and grow and stretch and move forward. You do have to move forward in those moments. I am so far afoul of your original question. I'm sorry. No,
that was perfect. You actually talked about learning and growing. Andrea Bernstein asked, how have you grown over the, like, how have your leadership practices changed over the years? Like, if you've always been outspoken, have you learned how to temper that, or has your overall leadership changed and matured as you have changed and matured?
It has. I hope it has. I hope it has. Close friends of my predecessor, Chief Mark Rolfing, he said to me when I was a deputy chief and I had 5 battalion chiefs, and they cover huge geographic sections of the city, that were they directly reported to me, and then all of the rest of the city. So for a 24-hour shift, I was in command of the operations of the city. And I thought I was pretty hot stuff. And I was good at my job. I think I've always been pretty good at my job with the firefighting and being able to command horrific emergency scenes. I think I've done halfway decent at that. But he asked me, my chief at the time asked me, do your people like working for you?
Mm.
And I said, obviously. I mean, really? Clearly, what's not to love? And he said, well, how do you know? And I said, well, because I would like working for me. And I think I do this the right way. And so ergo that equals they must love working for me. And he said, you should ask them. I was like, what? It's not how this works. I am the commander of all that lies before me. They must love how I do this. And as it turns out, they didn't. Many of them didn't. And it wasn't because they weren't up to the challenge of my amazing intellect or my prowess at how I wanted fires to be fought. It was because outspoken is one thing. Being a jag is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a dark period of time, and I'm not afraid to talk about it because it happened. It was real. And I would like to think I'm on the other side of it now. And I don't want to celebrate that it happened, because it was miserable times for me. It was miserable times for the people that, you know, I was exploring the autocratic portion of my leadership styles. Seriously. And I was very much like, it's cut and dry. You didn't do it. Boom, drop the hammer. Let's, you know, and that can really come across. So I'm trying to make it sound softer. That really did come across, as I've been told, very, very brutal and very unforgiving, and very much without a solution attached to it.
Mm.
And my grandpa and my father, we would sit in our backyard in the summer, have the grill going, and they would be telling stories, and their friends would be over. They'd be telling stories of these emergencies they had been at, fires and these huge car wrecks and all these things. And something always goes wrong. This line of work, if you think that there's such thing as a perfect firefight, you've never tried to put out a fire. So something is always not the way it should have gone. And there was literally fog of war in the middle of these firefights. And they would hammer those things. They would identify the thing that had gone wrong. But then I don't know why I remember this, but they would always focus on how it should have gone. What's the corrective measure to make that not happen again? That was always part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a huge chunk of my time, well, maybe not huge, but a significant and important chunk of time in leadership, I was overly focused on kind of the because I said so portion of things. And there's a time and a place for it. There is a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have time for like some big, deep philosophical debate in the middle of some of these emergency scenes. But
Mm-hmm.
the other 99% of the time, that's where you earn the belief and the trust and the understanding, so that when you just lob a grenade over there because that's what we need to do right now, everybody understands.
Yes.
Well, now it's serious.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly doing that, you know, if you're always at 10, you just wear people down.
Yeah.
And I'm a true believer that people, they are not following a rank. They're not following an office. They are not following out of fear. They are choosing to follow a person. They are choosing to follow a person. And if you betray that, it's a very simple matter to just, what's the big buzzword in all of the workforce now? Quiet quitting.
That's the buzzword. Yep.
Right. You'll see folks, yeah, they'll do exactly what you tell them to do. That's dangerous in the fire service. They'll
Yep.
do exactly what you tell them to do. And what you really want, because you don't want a bunch of robots running around. and it's impossible to even achieve that. What you want are thinking, discerning people out there just being bombarded with changing circumstances and all these variables every day. You want them to discern through that static the best course of action. It may not be the perfect course of action. They don't have time to arrive at a perfect conclusion. They take limited information in an extremely compressed time frame under true life hazard circumstances, and they've got to cobble together a plan that, when reviewed and parsed through by attorneys and insurance adjusters and politicians and oversight bodies 6 months down the road, has to make perfect sense. I don't know of any other profession that has to do that.
How do you prepare them? I'm thinking you got to be empowered. There's got to be some level of training and scenario running ahead of time so that they can put together these plans. Like what is the practice to prepare a person to think that way? So
there's a fear of trying to prepare when you get in this menu of conversations. People are afraid of it because they think you can't plan for every circumstance. You can't possibly conceive of every variable. And people who would say that are 100% correct. So what you must focus on training your folks to do, this is another grandpaism, you have to observe and drink in the reality that you are facing, not the reality that you wish you were facing or that you hope you were facing. What are you facing right now? Because that's the only thing you can adjust. Mm-hmm. It's the only thing you can start to move your widgets around in a better position to attack that. So you have to, what you're really training folks, it's almost like you're using simulated fire scenarios kind of as a Trojan horse for our line of work, firefighting. You use these simulated PowerPoint fires and you let people talk their way through as if they're fighting that fire, the decision making. And the fire specific strategies and tactics almost take a back seat to how people are interpreting the reality, comparing it against their knowledge and understanding of what is normal or what has changed since the past 5 seconds have gone by. And what do they know about the resources and our capabilities that we can bring to bear? And how do you bring that all together? So you're training more of a thought process system than you are how to handle a fire, which is why in the city of Milwaukee and throughout Milwaukee County, we are partnered with some fantastic fire departments throughout the entire county. We function from a uniform system of how we organize our emergency scenes. And we call it an incident management plan. Super boring bureaucrat speak for how do we talk to each other? How do we move information around so that we're not overloading any one component and that the important stuff gets up and the important stuff gets down in the chain of command rapidly. And we're not perfect at it, but we really pull together. We can jam a bunch of people together that had no idea they were going to have an appointment that day at some major incident. And they all understand coming in where they're going to fit. And if the situation changes, we have a mechanism to do that. It's about a thought process. It's about flexibility. It's about being able to take in new information, oftentimes very, very rapidly and many times not pleasant information, being able to take that in and still stay on your 2 feet and pull all of these pieces together. And then, I picture like a little mini typewriter that spits out like a 7-word sentence. Yep. That is the plan for all of this mess that you had jammed through this funnel and parse through. Process. Yeah. That's right. Mm-hmm. And in such a short period of time, when COVID hit on the very, very front end, like, I don't know how everybody else thought about it, but it was really being I felt just watching everything and you know, we have some folks in the fire department here that really stay in tune with all these things. It felt like this big cloud was coming across, like from the East Coast and like working its way across the nation. And like, we literally were renting freezer trucks for extra morgue space. Like that's what we started doing on the front end. We never needed to actually do or implement that, but that was our mindset on the front end. And it quickly became apparent to myself and all of the other fire service leaders throughout the county and throughout the nation, as we've talked since, that all of the structures in all of the other agencies and government bodies were not prepared for how to build this multi-headed response thing. But guess who was? The fire service. And we built the structure in the city here. We built it across the county. It spilled forth out into other areas in the state. And it wasn't that we're experts on epidemiology or how to quell a pandemic. It was that we simply know how to function with junk information. We know how to keep the left foot going and then the right foot after that, and then the left foot after that. And we're comfortable with not getting mired down in paralysis by analysis, which is another wonderful thing that happens around here. Is people they have a very dangerous belief that there is a most correct answer or a singular correct answer to these enormous complex gray area problems. So it becomes challenging when you jam these groups together, because you can always have a sniper in the group who, no matter what you propose, can always go, yeah, but what if, and then fill in whatever after that. Yeah, but what about, and you can tell pretty quick in a group when that has flipped from someone asking a legitimate question so you don't, step in a hole, to someone who just wants to be the aha gotcha person in the group. Yeah. And we got enough of those right now in the world. So when you're sitting on a Zoom meeting or you're in a meeting and there's just the one person whose primary self-appointed function appears to be, I'm the one who declares that everybody else is screwed up, but my way is the way. I'm telling you, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And true leaders, you can almost see the facial expressions on the screen where you're like, all right, I'm not gonna roast this dude right now, but boy, would I want to if it was old me.
Yeah. Just hold it in. If we can have, we'll go over 4 more minutes. And then as we're wrapping up, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, because I do want to tell the story that I've shared on the social media and got a big response from people. The day that we met, was that the day of your swearing in, or were we just celebrating it?
I think we're just celebrating it. Eric's really good at, like, he's just awesome at, like, he never forgets that someone had like a cool thing happen, right?
Yeah. Eric Kennedy pulled us together. We were in this dinner party celebrating a few things, but there was the day that I met you, and you had on the shirt with the flames on it. And I was like, this guy is cool, right? So we have dinner, and then we went to Blue at the top of the Pfister. And there's a guy in there who's like, I knew when I noticed him when we walked in, because he had been drinking, and I could tell that he was like overserved, right? So at some point in the night, he walks over to our party, and after some conversation decides to like pat my hair, because my hair was like out in a fro, and he like patted it from behind. I was sitting this way, he was behind me, and he like patted my hair, and I was kind of like a little in shock, and I was gonna let it go because I knew he was drunk, and I'm like, oh, drunk white dude patting my hair, and I just was trying to let it go. And, I think everybody was a little shocked. Nobody really knew what to say. Before I could really process it, Chief Lipski says, "You don't touch her hair," and snapped on the dude, went off on him. Like, "What's wrong with you? Stop touching her. You don't touch her hair." And I remember sitting there, and he was like, "Oh, like, all right." And he left me alone though.
Mm-hmm.
He backed up off me. But I remember thinking that I didn't know that I needed you to do that until you did it. Like I wasn't sitting there thinking, "Man, I wish somebody would tell this man to stop touching me." I wasn't thinking that. But as soon as you said something, I had this gigantic sense of relief, and like I was so grateful for it. After the fact, there were other people, like people had heard about it. People were talking to me about that for some days. That's part of the story stuck in my head. And it made me think about the other piece of your reputation is that you care deeply about the community, especially the underserved parts of our community, and you really show up like an ally for folks. What is that about for you, and where does that come from? Why is it important to you that you do that?
So this is gonna sound super oversimplified, but I've taken a lot of coursework in college and a lot of additional work since I've been out in the real world here in the fire department and advancing my degree. I was part of the Fire Service Executive Development Institute. It's a pretty kind of a marquee organization cohort to become a part of a 2-year immersive program. And it is very intentionally, it's about, I think we had about 24 people, executive fire service leadership people from across the nation. And it's intentionally a diverse group of people. And one of the things, there was a variety of different folks, and a couple of my closest colleagues there, who were chiefs in other organizations, African-American women. And in the fire service, we play with water a lot, right? That's what we do. Also in the fire service, if it's a hot summer day and we're cleaning the fire truck and we have garden hoses out, we oftentimes turn into 7-year-old children and have our own little water fights, which makes perfect sense to me. Love me, hate me for it, makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's enjoyable, team building, fun. However, there's not a lot you can do to wreck this hair, right? Like it is what it is. And it's been this way, like this started when I was like 16. That was fun. But they explained to me, like anything that's fun, there can be a very fine line that separates the fun from mean.
Yeah.
And they explained to me that they were, in their younger years as firefighters, they were intentionally splashed with water, which is not uncommon from that time in the fire service. Being a new person in the fire department, I hesitate to use the word hazing, but that's probably just because I think it makes us look bad and I don't like that, but that's what it was. And boom, turns out, and I have to just be honest about it, I don't know a lot about what it is like to be an African-American woman new in the fire service, but also with hair that, this is not good. And they told me how freaking important their hair is to them. Mm-hmm. And how it's different. It's a different texture of hair than my hair. Mm-hmm. Now, I could probably have rationalized my way through this thought process, and like I could observe that and go, oh, okay. But I don't really know what that means. I don't know something as simple as being splashed with water. I don't know what that means. The other thing, and I've read a bunch of articles about this, and it gets some pop culture reference from time to time, that what'd you call us before? White folks? Oh, white, yeah.
Like,
So like, but like white folks, we can tend to be super like, oh, it's like a museum piece, and like, oh, I just want to touch it and poke it. And like that, first off, that's cringy, right? Like that's like, why do you just think you walk up and touch someone's hair? But I think there's a deeper kind of there's like a grimier reason, I think, that people would just feel like they can just walk up and pet you like a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't see the dude. I could see the dude. Everything I just described when this guy came up behind you, he was looking at you like you were an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, like he had determined he was the guy who had to come over and see, what is this strange thing before me?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what in God's name are you thinking?
Yes.
So like all those little bits of information, I think a lot of times in these discussions, just throw it out there, I think a lot of times in diversity, equity, and inclusion discussions, we turn cultures and ethnicities and races and gender identities, we turn them into these little caricatures, right? So that we can, put people in these little boxes and like, oh, that specific demographic, you don't do this because then everybody will be triggered and offended. This one, you don't do this, and we fail to look at the big pot that we're all in. That's just basic humanity. When we're hyper focused on that, I'm not marginalizing those characteristics and that people have different things that hit them sideways, but it was almost like a chemical reaction. When he walked up, the look on his face, you know, if there was like words in his thought bubble, it would have been like so demeaning.
Yeah.
And so that stuff just gets me angry. I don't know why. It just gets me angry because here we are, we're out trying to have a nice night. We've got a group of friends. Sorry that this chump wasn't invited to the party. And he just decided you weren't worth what everybody else was because he had a curiosity.
Yeah. So
then that's I don't know, that just, for lack of a softer way of putting it, it just pissed me off.
Yes. Well, I'm grateful, and I wanted to make sure that I told that story because I think we've got to start getting pissed off for each other when we see injustice, because it felt so good to have you do that. And I mean, I guess it just doesn't happen a ton. Like, I think if I had told the story after the fact, people would be like, oh, that's terrible. That man should have never touched your hair. You know, I think that happens more often than what you did right there in the moment. I think, is that your stepdad on here?
That's my stepdad and my mom.
And your mom. One of them said that your superpower is empathy, and I 100% feel that way. So I want to thank you for that night, and I want to thank you for today. For this conversation. We went over 15 minutes, but a lot of people stayed to hear the rest of how you felt about that story. So I'm just so grateful that you said yes to doing this, and that we finally did meet. And now I feel like I found a friend in you. So I appreciate that though so much.
Likewise. I was flabbergasted when I saw you were inviting me to do this, and I really, really, really appreciate it. As you may have noticed, I don't mind talking. I just hope that the words mean something every
They
once in
do.
a while, so.
They do. This was awesome. We did have some really good questions in the Q&A. So Sophia is going to capture those for us and send them to you. And if you can give a response, we'll send it to everybody that registered for the session. So about close to 200 people registered. Half of them will watch the replay and the other half are with us here this morning. So this was a great discussion. Thank you so much. You were really amazing. You are a leader that I aspire to be like. So thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. And likewise, Rachel, thank you so much for having me.
Okay. So remember, we have 2 more sessions today. We have all day Thursday, there are 3 sessions, and then we got a bonus session on Friday. You're already registered for the ones that you want to go to probably, but if you haven't shared this with anybody, do you really love your friends and colleagues if you haven't shared boot camp's calendar with them? Do you really? Share it out on social media, email it, forward it. However, the more, the merrier. It won't be over after boot camp. MMAC Fuel has partnered with Milwaukee Films Black Lens for the Engage and Activate Diverse Professionals Forum. It's free, and you can sign up right now, and it happens on February 1st at 6 p.m. at Company Brewing. We're going to drop the link if we haven't already. If you want to sign up right now, just go to Milwaukee Films website and look for all of their Black History programming, and you'll be able to find it straight away.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I just got to tell my stepfather happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. I think it is so sweet they're on here.
I know, right? My mom's like my biggest supporter.
Happy birthday, everybody. Let's go to the chat and say happy birthday. Aw, that was really sweet. Thanks to our sponsors for boot camp. The sponsors also say happy birthday. Associated Bank is our major sponsor this year. They're new to the boot camp family, but we appreciate them coming in the top sponsorship spot, really making this happen, making sure that it's free and available to everybody, all the professionals in the Milwaukee region. American Family Insurance. My syncopation was a little off, Chief. I don't know. I need to work on that, but American Family is back for the 3rd year supporting boot camp, and for the 4th year, Radio Milwaukee is back as our media and supporting sponsor. So thanks, many thanks to them, and many thanks to all of you. Thank you for your patience as we started late, and thank you for hanging with us because we went over, and some of you, a lot of you stayed, so I appreciate that. Now you get to go back to work better right away because of this session. Thanks again, Chief, and we will see you all at noon.
Thank you.